today I wanted to share my story of leaving my Baptist church, leaving my entire identity over 10 years ago, and how I was able to rebuild myself, how I'm still rebuilding myself. It's been a little over 10 years since I've left my church, and this is probably the first time that I'm openly talking about it. It's the first time I'm actually sitting down and making this video. It's been a long time coming, honestly, because it's not easy. It's not easy to talk about leaving a closed community, a culture. I was also raised in a Russian Baptist culture, so it was Christianity mixed with the Slavic culture. So there's a lot of nuances there as well. And I left it all behind 10 years ago because I felt that I grew out of it. I began asking really hard questions along the way, and there were things that caused me to ask a lot of questions. One big thing I attribute it to is pain. And everybody has their pain, their things they go through. And it's not to judge. I'm not here to judge anybody's pain. It's not about how big your pain is. And you might hear what I was going through and say, oh, like, that's nothing, that's whatever, like, get over it. But my pain was mine alone to deal with, to go through, and that is what caused me to ask questions and eventually to get out. It wasn't the only thing, but it was a big thing. And in my case, the pain I had in my heart was depression. The depression I felt was for many years, and part of the reason I felt depression is because I was in a relationship that was not good for me, and I was so in love with this person that I did not know how to get out of that relationship, and I also didn't know how to move forward with the relationship. So I was in this place of just waiting, thinking things were going to change. In the church, though, when you say you're depressed, the solution is to run to God. Just pray more, read the Bible more, lean into God. And I did all that. I was heavily involved in the music ministry in church. I threw myself into the ministry. I always loved to be in the forefront. I loved to sing, and I was doing all of the things, but I wasn't feeling fulfilled inside. And all those years, I just remember struggling because I would see other people that weren't as involved in church or just were leading double lives, you could say. And then they just followed all the steps to become a member of the church, then eventually to get married and start their families and just keep moving forward, and everything was fine. I would see that and I would not understand, like, how are they doing that? Like, I can't do that. I can't just pretend. I'm all into this ministry, and I'm also all into this relationship, because another thing that it was a big thing in church is that as a woman, you want to get married. That's like everybody's goal. It's valued, and everybody is just like waiting to get married. And if you don't get married by a certain age, it's like this unspoken, how to say it? They won't say it to your face, but you're considered an old maid. So there was this pressure as a woman of like getting married and getting married to the right person and just being this example. So let me back up a little bit and tell you a little bit about my church. And this is not to bash my church at all. I'm past all of that. I went through all the stages when I got out, and now looking back, I just think that it's a high control group with good intentions, but also there's patterns and ways of living and just narratives that can also be dangerous, can be unhealthy, they can limit you. And if somebody chooses to stay in that environment, that's totally okay. I'm not against that. I'm not against religion, as long as, you're not radical and you're not like killing people for your faith or whatever. But I also believe now that everybody has the freedom, and you can choose, and you are not going to go to hell if you choose not to be a Christian, or if you choose to believe in something else. And so the church I was raised in was fairly strict. We were Baptist, which means that you usually get baptized later in life. So it's not like in the Catholic Church where babies get baptized. You decide when you want to be baptized, and it's usually at an age where you make that decision. And in order to become a member of a local Baptist church, you have to be baptized. So at the time of your baptism, you become kind of like part of the universal church of God, like where you're considered saved. You will go to heaven if you die. But you're also a member of the local church, which means you can participate in the communion, which is participating in taking the bread and the wine in remembrance of Christ's death. You're also able to participate in certain meetings where members get together and make decisions on certain things. So it's you just feel like you belong. And I grew up in this from birth. I believed in heaven and hell. It's very black and white when it comes to this. And there's many rules around that. So just the way you are, you have to be modest, you have to be the light of the world. You, as a woman, and also men, you don't usually get out of your parents' home until you get married. There's no sex before marriage. It's looked down upon. You gotta stay pure. If you get in trouble, if there's some kind of sin and you say you are a member of the church, you get excommunicated from the church, which means you can't participate in the communion, you can't participate in the member meetings. You're kind of like, you're punished in a way. And usually that means you get up in front of church, the members know what you did, you have to apologize, you have to repent, and things like that. So it's not a very pleasant experience. So growing up in that and in the beliefs, because they were so black and white, subconsciously you have this they versus us mentality. So everybody that is in the church, everybody that's a Christian, is saved, is on the right path, they're going to heaven. Everybody that's outside of that is lost, is not saved, they're all going to hell. No matter how good they are, what good works they do, even if they're a good person, if they don't believe in Jesus Christ, they're doomed. So I remember as a child and even as a young adult, it's like anywhere you go, you subconsciously have this mentality. So even if you meet nice people or you make friends, it's like your goal is to tell them about Jesus. Your goal is to make sure that they get to heaven, so that they get saved. And you can't really just accept people for who they are. There is judgment, you don't really accept anybody else's ways, because this is the only way. There is the strong belief in hell. Hell as a fiery place that every unbeliever goes to. So as a child, I used to be terrified of that. I remember being maybe like 9 years old and thinking, if someone came to me right now and they said, you either have to deny Jesus Christ or we're going to kill you, like, what would you say? Like, how would you survive this? Like, would you deny Jesus? Or like, what would happen? I would literally have these thoughts as a child. And that's how I was raised. I don't think there was any ill intent in my church, or, I don't think my parents had ill intent. Of course, everybody is just doing what they know is right. They believe what they were taught. So it was just the norm. It's how we lived. And church was not just a place that I went to on Sundays. It was a huge part of my identity. It was like my second home. So even school, like, I didn't really care much about school or activities in school or after school activities, because you went to school to learn, you came home, and all my friends, everything that was like dear to my heart, all the fun stuff, all the parties, all the camps, everything, all the holidays were all celebrated in church. So it was a huge part of my identity and my life. Long story short, that was my life growing up. And of course you have ups and downs. There's days where you feel like God's mad at you. There's days where you feel like life is good and I'm going to be doing good and following all the rules. And then when I was 15, I got into a relationship with somebody that his family was part of the church. We met in church, But eventually he stopped going to church. But I knew that the only way that we could be together and we could get our parents' blessing and the church's blessing, and the only way we could get married normally without making noise and without destroying relationships, was to be in church, was to do it the correct way. It's like you repent, you get baptized, then you get married, and everybody's happy. But he, at that time, chose not to be part of church, and because of that, we struggled in our relationship. We had no good communication. There were many other issues that I'm not going to get into right now, but it was a really painful and very charged relationship because I was in love with this man, and I just prayed for him. I was like, I just got to pray. God's going to answer. God's going to change things. And that relationship, because it was so painful and it was for so many years, it caused me to dig deeper. And how I said earlier, it just made me notice many inconsistencies in church, some of which I can maybe make a different video about. I'm trying to just share the story and kind of shorten it, get to the bottom line. But it really caused me to see that the way people live, the way people make decisions, the way people live double lives didn't really line up with what the church wanted. And that pain just caused me to question a lot of the way I was. In parallel, I would say that I was always a person of freedom. It is my highest value today, just the freedom to be yourself, freedom to think for yourself, freedom to just be who you are. And in the church that I grew up in, you couldn't really be yourself. You had to follow the rules, even when it came to music. Only certain instruments were allowed. There couldn't be any kind of music that you would dance to because it would be too worldly. So, and that was just like one example, but there were so many, because it was so regulated and because there were so many rules, you couldn't really be yourself. You had to be a specific way because you would either be judged or, worst case, you'd be excommunicated for something. And I was always interested in other denominations of Christianity. I had friends from different denominations. I even went to a Pentecostal Bible college when I was in my early 20s, I believe it was, because I was just so curious what they believed and why they believed in it. And I had friends in every denomination, and I do remember being scolded for that, being like, just remember, our church is the right church, everybody, even the denominations, the different denominations were looked down upon, like they're not doing it right. But I always had this curiosity in life, and I still do. And I think that also played a huge role in just kind of being afraid, because I was raised with the fear of God, the fear of make sure you stay on the right path. So I always had that, but then I was also curious, and I always I like to learn, and I like to ask questions and see why people do things differently and why they believe differently. And I think that is also a big factor in why I left, because as you become curious and as you ask questions, and then as you get answers to those questions, you can't ignore what's not true anymore for you. And you can't stay in places that you outgrow. So in parallel, there was a lot that happened. But I'll make it short. So in parallel, I was given this book by somebody that also played a role in kind of helping me deconstruct and kind of see what I'm going through better and understand why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. So when I think back, I didn't leave just because of one situation or there was one reason for me leaving. It was a combination of things, and it was in stages. And I remember I was in network marketing at the time, and my mentor was a Christian, still is a Christian, that had he went through a very difficult time in his life as well, and he was able to get out of it, and he basically lived with God's grace. And when he mentored me and I shared that I was depressed, I didn't really understand how to move forward. I didn't really understand why I was doing everything right. I was so involved in church. I was doing all the things that I was supposed to do, but I was feeling this hole in my heart and I was depressed. And I remember him telling me, Albina, you don't know what grace means. God doesn't need you to do all of these things that you're saying you're doing in order for him to bless you and to earn his grace. Grace is just a gift. And I remember he gave me a book to read, recommended me a book. It was called Destined to Reign, R-E-I-G-N. And it was by Joseph Prince. And that book completely changed my understanding of God's grace and just Christianity. It gave me the strength to leave my church, like physically leave, and just realize that, oh, I understand now. Like the way I'm taught grace in this church is works-based, because it was performance-based. Yes, you have to believe, you have to accept, you accept God's grace. It is God's grace that he sent his son to die for your sins. So there was that part, but then there was also all these works that came along with it, which, again, it wasn't presented like, oh, you got to do the works to earn God's love. It wasn't said, they didn't say it out loud like that. Of course, it's like, it's God's grace and it's just natural for you to live this certain way. But bottom line, it is performance-based. It's like, if you're not performing a certain way, you are judged and you're not on the right path. You're outside of God's grace, so to say. So that book, I would say, really changed my life at that moment. It was a stepping stone, and I felt so much freedom. I remember I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I needed. God's grace. Like, I didn't see it this way before. So that was a huge part. That book played a huge part in my life. So if you are in this place where you're kind of like questioning, you're still a believer, but maybe you don't feel that you belong in like a high control situation or a church, this book really helped me at that time. So I do recommend it. And then another thing that really helped me was I ended up getting this book from someone that also helped me on my path, and it is called Where Are the Dead? I don't know where you can get this book. It was just given to me, and it basically is a book that uses Bible verses and uses the Bible to show you how hell, the way it's presented as like this fiery place, eternal torture, how it doesn't exist biblically. It even says here, what say the scriptures concerning hell? And this book, honestly, it just helped me so much, because one of the biggest reasons people are afraid to question or to even think that maybe Christianity is not for me is the fear of hell. It's like when you're raised, especially from a young age, to believe in this black and white way that there's a heaven for those that are saved, and then there's a place of eternal fire for those that are not saved. It's really terrifying to even question. But this book really helped me, and maybe I'll do another video on this book and how it explains what I just said. But that was also another stepping stone and another chain that was taken off of me that really allowed me to not be afraid. And it gave me my freedom back, the real freedom, the freedom to choose. And when I really think about it now, it's like, I accept every person. I accept every way that is non-destructive and that is helping people on their path to become better, to connect with God. But it has to be your choice. It can't be coerced. It can't be like, oh, I was just raised in this and that's all. Like, I accept this. I mean, again, you can do whatever you want, but right now for me, it's like, if a person chooses that, that's okay. If they know they have all these other choices, that's okay. And I'm okay with any path today. I think it's not fair when children get indoctrinated from a very young age, and especially when it's so fear-based, because then it's like they don't even have an option to think for themselves or to make a decision, because it's all subconsciously, it's all around fear. It's not going to be presented like that, of course, unless you sin. Then it's like, oh, you're going to go to hell. It's of course presented in like this loving way, like God is loving, and yes, I believe God is loving. I do believe God is love, and I never lost my belief in God. In fact, I feel like I'm even closer to him or her or the universe, or this feeling that I have of this connection I have with the divine never left, and I always had that. I still pray, I communicate in my own way, but it's without the filter of religion. And there's just so much freedom in that for me. And today, that's where I'm at. I think that it's important to talk about these things, because I remember when I left, I was really afraid to talk about me not believing in certain things anymore. I was really afraid of judgment. I was really afraid of sharing it with people close to me, because being on the inside, you know how much people judge those on the outside. And here you are just leaving your tribe. So 10 years ago when I left, shortly after that, I got married to my husband. He was not the reason that I left church, as some people may think or have said. We did meet around the time that I was in transition, and I was planning to leave. And he's Jewish. He was raised not as strict as me at all. His family is more traditional. So that was a whole other thing, learning to be together and find that common ground. And we had a lot of close and similar, I would say the same values. That's why we're still together, and we value the same things, like freedom and family and choice and all these things. But it was interesting blending, our beliefs together and the way we were raised together, because when we got married, I still considered myself a Christian. Like I still went to church, just not my church, not the church I grew up in. And it was a whole process. And he was very helpful too, because he brought more insights to me. And then when we visited Israel in 2017, it was just really cool for me to see how the Jewish people in Israel, just like I was religious in my community, and how I was like, I believed that we had it figured out, I saw the same thing in Israel, just from another perspective. Just they were Jewish, and they saw themselves as the light of the world. And there's so many strains of Judaism too. You see so many different people and the way they worship and everything. So it was just really interesting to see, and it was such a learning experience. And it just continued to expand my mind on this thing of like, there's so many people in the world. We all see God. We all find God in our own ways. There's so many journeys to Him, and it's okay. It doesn't need to be judged. Other people's ways don't need to be judged. You don't need to be afraid to question. Nothing bad is going to happen to you. You are not without God if you leave Christianity. That's just my perspective now. That's the way I view life. It has given me so much more compassion towards other people, true compassion, not compassion of coming to them with an agenda and being like, oh, poor them, and I have the solution. I don't think that's right, because a lot of times people come and put their beliefs on other people, especially when that person is very vulnerable, and that might not be a good solution for them. Nowadays, I have a lot more compassion to people, and if I see somebody struggling, I try to be their friend truly and try to help in ways that I can without like coercing them into a specific way or a specific belief. And I think that's right. I think that's better than how I used to be. And the reason I'm making this video is for that person, maybe that man or that woman that is going through something similar. Maybe you're in a high control group. Maybe you're in a soft cult situation. I don't know. Maybe you're in a very strict environment, strict church, strict upbringing that is so confining to you, and you feel like you're growing out of it and you can't stay, but you're afraid, you don't know how to leave, you don't know how to break free of certain destructive beliefs in your mind maybe. This video is for you, because I do remember when I first left, I was searching the internet. I was like looking for people that were going through something similar, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find anyone who could really relate. And I wished I did, because that would have been so supportive and so helpful, because there's so many things you go through, and it's a very lonely journey. You can't really turn to many people because not a lot of people understand. You can't really turn to the people from your past because they consider you a lost sheep. You know, they're praying for you to come back. So their only solution is like, oh, you got to get back to God. You got to get back to church. And for me, getting out of that, I like to say it, and I say it so many times, it's like a chick being hatched out of its egg. So inside the egg, it's warm, it's cozy, it's comfortable. Church gave me a lot of comfort. It was like family. There's so many good memories that I have from there too. It wasn't like it was all horrible or all bad. Otherwise, people wouldn't stay there. You are cozy and comfy, and then when the chick gets out of the egg, when it hatches, you can never go back in because you're out of it, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's like a whole new world around me to explore now. And yeah, this world is big, it's unknown, it's not familiar, but it's there. That's your new reality. And the chicks that are still on the inside can never understand the breaking out until they experience that breaking out. So that was literally my experience. So I remember when I was going through it in the beginning, it's like you can't really go back and share it with the people that are still in that comfortable situation, because they don't see what you see. They didn't break out, and some of them don't need to break out. For some people, church and certain strict environments, they are their saving grace. And I know examples of people that, were drug addicts or were in really horrible situations in life, and church literally saved them, and that's good. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But there's also people like me for whom you can't stay in it anymore. You grow out of it, and you have to move forward. So this video is for you if that is what you're going through. I just want to encourage you and say that you are not crazy. You don't have anything to be afraid of. Follow your heart. Follow that calling. If you feel that there's more that you need to explore, if you feel a tug towards something different, explore that. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of anything, and look for like-minded people, because you're not the only one going through this. It feels a lot of times like I'm the only one this is happening to, nobody gets me, but there are people like you out there going through similar situations. So find them, seek them, and if you can relate to what I'm sharing, leave me a comment, send me a message, and I'll try to get back and we can chat some more. So this is just in short. There's a lot more I can share, but I just thought I'd put this video out there first. Just kind of put it out there that yes, I was raised in a very strict Russian Baptist church. I was raised in a very black and white way, and I got out. I don't consider myself a Christian. I honestly don't consider myself anything. I am just a human being that seeks to grow. I'm constantly into personal development. I'm constantly looking ways to improve myself, to learn, to expand my consciousness, to understand, learning to love. And like I said, I never lost that connection with God. It's always there. And the most important thing is I feel like I'm truly happy. I have true freedom because I have the freedom to choose. And it's not the kind of freedom that is like, oh, and it's without fear that if I choose wrong, I'm gonna go to hell. Because I don't have those beliefs anymore, I feel like it's a true freedom because there's no room for mistakes. I'm here on this earth to learn, to grow, and God is with me. and he wouldn't have sent me to earth if he knew that I would just be lost forever and, I don't know, go to hell in the end. I just don't believe in that kind of God. I don't believe that that is what love means. So I have discovered true freedom, true joy. Of course, I have my struggles. Right now I'm going through grief and the loss of my father. There's a lot of struggles that I do have, but there's also joy, and there's also a path, and there's also a journey, and there is a lot of love and a lot of people that I have in my life that support me, and true friendships, and it's just beautiful. So once again, if you're going through something similar, I understand you, I see you, you will be okay. Just follow your heart and stay true to yourself. That's the most important thing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.